Hi, Randy Ferguson here. Well, I want to thank you first of all for taking a moment to watch this video. It says a lot about you that you want to explore the LCA. It says that you're at a place in your life where you're interested in really closing that gap between maybe where you are and who you were meant to be. So welcome. I want to start with a story that's really about you. Several years ago, I was in Bangkok. I was working with a leadership team for a major car manufacturer. And afterwards, I had a chance to be the tourist. And I came upon this temple. And as I walked in, I saw on one side was this giant statue of Buddha. And next to it was this glass case with these chunks of clay in it. I thought that was interesting. So I went up and I saw this little story printed out, and turns out back in the 1950s, the Thai government was building a freeway to Bangkok. And in building this freeway, they had to physically relocate this ancient Buddhist temple. And so they brought in all the heavy equipment, and at one point they were lifting this giant clay statue of Buddha, and it started to crack. So the head monk said, "Set it down," which they did. And that night, the monk took a flashlight, he shined it on that crack, and to his amazement, something from inside the statue shined back. Well, curiosity got the better of this guy. He took a chisel and a hammer, he started hammering on this thing, and after a couple of hours, he stood in front of a 10.5-foot tall, 4.5-ton solid gold statue of Buddha. Single biggest piece of gold on the planet. Well, of course, they researched this thing, and they discovered that 300 years earlier, the Burmese army was coming south, attacking what was then called Siam. The Siamese monks knew this, so they covered up their precious gold statue with clay. Good news, when the army came through, they did not take the statue. Bad news, they did take anybody who knew the secret. So for 300 years, people are walking by doing their daily activities, not knowing that this far beneath the surface was solid gold. When I heard that story, it moved me, because isn't this true about us as human beings? Who we are is so sacred, so filled with potential. We know that. And yet we live in a culture that teaches us so much of what doesn't work. And as a result, we start gathering the fear, the guilt, the resentment, the hurt from the past, the self-judgment, all the gunk. And then we try to go through life carrying all this stuff, and no wonder it can feel exhaustive at times. The LCA is committed to working with people in a way where they drop this stuff, not intellectually, but experientially, so that they feel a weight lifted from their shoulders. And it's not so much that we give something as it is that we work with people to remove something. Who you are is already magnificent. No seminar can give you that. We want to reveal it. What's possible is a remarkable, enormous, wonderful quality of life. And it's there for the taking. So what this video is about is sharing with you the basics of the LCA so you can take a look and see if this is something that you want to pursue or not. Either way is fine. We just want to really tell the truth about it. So where did this begin? Back in 1981, I fell madly in love with a woman from Aspen, Colorado. Later that year, we got married. In 1983, my daughter Heather was born. We had this beautiful family. I was going full speed with my real estate investing career. And then around 1985, 86, I entered into what turned out to be a very dark night of the soul. It was important for me at that time to learn some lessons. I didn't know it, but at the time, I had to learn some lessons about priorities and what really mattered. And I got the lessons in a tough way. I ended up going through bankruptcy, foreclosure, losing our beautiful 6-bedroom home, all my investment real estate, my 59 Jag. And worst of all, I lost my wife and my daughter through divorce. They moved to California, and I'll tell you, that Ryder truck driving off, I felt like it was running over my heart. It was an extremely painful time, but it was also a cathartic time. It was a time when something was being awakened in Randy. And interestingly enough, my brother, who does similar work in Houston, was going through something very similar. He was an attorney, a divorce attorney. And so we started talking with each other. And we realized that, when we stopped blaming our wives, we started to take responsibility. We started to ask the question, why did this happen? Well, we started to realize some dynamics, some principles that we'd never been taught before. And then we started to share these because they were so meaningful. And we started to share these with people around us. They started to have breakthroughs. And one thing led to another. We ended up teaching seminars, and Bill gave up his law practice. I gave up my real estate career, and we've never looked back. Interestingly enough, when we did that, all these forces came together that we would never have been smart enough to orchestrate. Bill wrote a book from an attorney's point of view called How to Heal a Painful Relationship. Oprah got hold of it, flew him to Chicago, and that became a bestseller. I ended up going through a psychology program, got my master's in spiritual psych with a counseling emphasis. And then I also had the opportunity to teach higher level leadership skills to executives all over the world, in Spain, Germany, Thailand, extensively in Mexico and throughout the United States. And this just trained me immeasurably. Add to that, being able to work with over 2,000 people individually, coaching them on how to create extraordinary lives. And also, I had the privilege of leading over 1,000 individual seminars, personal development seminars. All of this came together to give me the wherewithal to lead an extraordinary, life-changing weekend and 7-week course we call the Love, Courage, and Achievement Project, LCA for short. This work is based on 4 fundamental principles. Number 1, that who you are is already sacred, already precious beyond words, limitless potential. And number 2, that even though that's so, we tend to gather in a dysfunctional culture. The fear, the guilt, the resentment, the hurt from the past, the self-judgment, the false beliefs, all the baggage. And then we navigate through life carrying all this stuff, and it's exhaustive. It feels like a backpack full of rocks. The third principle is that there is a way to have this clay come tumbling down, to drop it, not so much intellectually. None of this is rocket science, but experientially, where you feel a weight lifted from your shoulders. Let me give you an example of this. I might work with a gentleman who has harbored resentment for his dad for a couple decades. And he's at a place in his life where he realized that's not doing any good at all. In fact, it's costing him tremendously. And he wants to get through it. And he realizes that forgiveness isn't about condoning past behavior. What his dad did wasn't okay. But it is about setting himself free. So now he's ready. And I take him step by step through the exercises where he lets go of that resentment, like I said, experientially. And in the process, he may be crying his eyes out, snot dripping from his nose. But you know what? The atmosphere, the environment is so safe. This is his chance for a breakthrough. And it's interesting. There's so much support there that as you look around the room, everybody's grabbing for tissues. Because when one person has a breakthrough, we all have a breakthrough. When he's finished, I'll ask him, so how does that feel? And the single most common word people use to describe their experience of freedom is lighter. I just feel lighter. So this is a process of getting lighter and lighter and lighter, which is in a way what enlightenment is. It's lightening up. The fourth principle is that there's something called the experience of love. Take a look. Just recall for a moment a time when you were in the presence of somebody who really truly loved you. Not a clingy love, but a genuine love. And when you were in that presence of unconditional acceptance and deep appreciation, What else were you experiencing? When I ask audiences, their reply is, I was experiencing a joy, a peace, an aliveness, a vitality. I felt like whatever I did was okay. A sense of being respected and cared for. There was a sense of creativity and aliveness. Well, one of the things people discover is that what determines our quality of life is very different than what we're taught in our culture. What we're taught is that what creates quality of life is standard of living. That if we just get everything arranged the right way, if I get the right income and the right mate and the kids are behaving a certain way and I have the right house and car and deodorant, then by golly, I'm going to feel this wonderful quality of life. But you know what? You can't count on standard of living to determine quality of life 100% of the time, can you? Now, don't get me wrong, I love standard of living stuff, but it can't deliver what the experience of love can. If you take a look when you were in the presence of somebody who loved you absolutely, what was present was quality of life off the charts. What gets restored in the LCA is our ability to create this incredibly high quality of life from the inside out. Yes, we've got to handle the outside things, but it starts from in here. We live in a culture where we're so knowledgeable about the externals and we know so little about how to navigate inside. You're going to get that back. Another key piece is that people start to discover that they have a relationship with self. Now, again, we're not taught this in our culture. I've got a relationship with my parents, my coworkers, my kids, my neighbors. What do you mean relationship with self? But you do. There is a way that you treat you, that you speak to you, that you relate to you. And when people really get this, their next thought is, and you know what? That relationship could use some work. So what people realize is that their relationship with self determines something called self-esteem. Now, self-esteem isn't just about feeling good, although that's reason enough. Self-esteem determines our productivity in life. Take a look. When your self-esteem is off the charts, you set high goals and you're very likely to achieve them. When self-esteem's in the toilet, you know what? I don't even want to set goals. And if I did, the likelihood of success is diminished tremendously. So as you start to build relationship with self, you start to become more productive. This starts to impact your bank statement. It is very, very practical. Now, maybe you've already got fantastic self-esteem, but what difference would it make if you could crank that up a few notches? In fact, one of the things that people learn in the LCA is how do you master attitude? We know intuitively that attitude impacts everything. What if you discovered an actual process where your attitude was at a peak state regardless of the circumstances, that you became, for the most part, unshakable in your life? How would that impact your productivity? How would that impact your relationships? How would that impact your finances?